death dumps, otherwise known as chemical trails, are being dropped and sprayed throughout the United States, in England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Europe, and I have personally seen them not only in the United States but in Mexico and Canada. Birds are dying around the world. Fish are dying by the hundreds of thousands around the world. This is genocide. This is poison. This is murder by the United Nations. This element within our society that's doing this must be stopped. I happen to know of 2 of the locations where the airplanes are that dump this crap on us. 4 of the planes are out of the Air National Guard, Lincoln, Nebraska, and the other planes are out of Fort Still, Oklahoma. I personally have observed the planes that were standing still in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, at the Air National Guard. They have no markings on them. They're huge, bomber-like airplanes with no markings. This is a crime. Crime against humanity, crime against America, crime against the citizens of this great country. They must be stopped. What is wrong with Congress? This has an effect on their population and their people and their friends and their relatives and themselves. What's wrong with them? What's wrong with the pilots who are flying these airplanes? They're dumping this crap, this poison, on their own families. Somebody has to do something about it. Somebody in Congress has to step forward and stop it now. Thank you. I'm Ted Gunderson.
This is killing us.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is poison. Poison being dropped on us. Nobody's doing anything about it. Congress is not doing anything about it. But this is being dropped on them and their children and their grandchildren. So what is going on behind the scenes?
When I moved to the Pacific Northwest thinking I would find clean air and seeing these trails above that were blocking, in some cases, 60, 70, 80% of my solar uptake, clearly something was going on. And research led me to this subject. I began testing water, did not want to find these toxic heavy metals, but I did, in ever-increasing amounts. I'm in this fight because my children have no future if we don't stop this. And even if we stop this, we faced immense challenges, immense. There is even more climate engineering going on above the clouds on days like today. And we know this because it's coming down in the rain. These particulates are so small, they enter right through the lung lining, go straight into the bloodstream, and adhere to your cell receptors like a plaque. Again, we are all getting dumber by the day. And that's why, again, I focus on this issue. If we can't think clearly, what challenges will we face? None. We will face none. And as far as what the global elite do to exempt themselves, there are chelation methods available to them that we don't have. It's up to us to act. It's up to us to do what we can. Earth is now a toxic planet. There's no question about this. You can't hide from this. In fact, the only uncontaminated body of water on the planet is Lake Vostok in Antarctica because it's below a mile of ice. That's it. Nothing is uncontaminated, but the greatest single source is, again, climate engineering. All roads lead back to climate engineering. Why are the bees dying off? Colony collapse disorder. And I've spoken to the head bee people in the country, but they won't look. So why are the bees dying 1,000 miles into the wilderness? They're looking at a chemical, and chemicals are bad. But why are the bees dying 1,000 miles into the wilderness? We have a study from 2010. 1,000 whales from the most remote places on the planet that had, quote, jaw-dropping levels of aluminum in their tissue. There is nowhere to hide from this. How many have already died? How many people have already died as a direct result of these programs? Respiratory mortality in the continental US from 2005 to 2010 went from 8th on the list of mortality to 3rd. That's an astronomical amount of people. How many people have asthma? Alzheimer's. By the way, the Alzheimer's Association about a month ago refused to sell me a $500 sponsorship for their event because they told me in no uncertain terms they did not want me talking about aluminum being connected to Alzheimer's. So we did a little research and found out that elements of the aluminum industry sponsor the Alzheimer's Association. We have, with the geoengineering, weather warfare. We know that cyclonic suppression is not only possible, but being done. This is hurricane suppression and hurricane augmentation. We saw Cyclone Haiyan last year in the Philippines cut a swath through that island nation, and now the U.S. military is there under humanitarian pretext, but now they're setting up bases. Same thing happened in Pakistan. Same thing in Thailand. Thailand refused the U.S. a military base that they told Thailand was for weather monitoring. The Thai government apparently knew it was for weather manipulation. They refused the base. Thailand immediately found itself underneath record floods. So we know this is going on, and when you have climate engineering, you cannot separate that from biological warfare. You cannot. So we have a climate science community that is either clinically blind, in total denial, or lying for a paycheck. How can you have the largest scientific panel in human history, the IPCC, 2,000 climatologists, that cannot recognize this atrocity in our skies? How is that possible? It doesn't take a lot of consideration to answer this question. It's about power and control. It's always been about power and control. And we have leaders of nations on the floor of the UN stating that their country is being droughted out by NATO weather modification programs. This is fact, absolute fact. Our media does not cover any of this. The power structure, the military-industrial complex will never, ever admit defeat. Never. I talked to an insider with these programs. I can't release his name, but I published the conversation. And here's what he said. The government will never disclose these programs because they know if the public found out, and I'm quoting about verbatim, they would find those responsible and shoot them or hang them in front of a firing squad. They know how the public will react to this. If we're to have any chance for a living planet, we must stop this. We must stand together. We must take a stand together. One of the most incredible men that I feel ever lived, Martin Luther King, said there comes a time when silence is betrayal. And we are at that time now.
Isn't that astounding?
It's astounding.
That you could have something that's so incredibly visible and so incredibly destructive, and so many people are trying to deny and pretend it's not happening. Our skies look like something from another planet. I mean, blue skies are gone. The air is very unnatural. It's very dry, staticky. It's like living on another planet. We have so little time. I mean, the speed at which the biosphere is imploding is beyond belief. It's absolutely beyond belief, and I don't think they can hide this much longer. The power structure is getting increasingly desperate as they know they can't hide what they've done, and they still have immense power. As they become desperate, they become more dangerous, and I think that they're capable of, at any point in time, another 9/11 type event to try to lock down society, as they know society is waking up. So many people, even inside those criminal corporate interests, don't understand the immediacy and totality of what's unfolding around us. There's only one solution to this, and climate engineering has to stop. And even if it stops, we face unimaginable challenges, and a lot of people don't get that either yet. Even if we stop it, a lot of people don't yet seem to understand permanent damage has been done to the Earth's life system. Permanent in the sense that the recovery period can be, for something even close to this type of event, 10 to 20 million years. Once the public knows, there'll be panic. And they're doing everything they can right now to keep that panic from happening. They're artificially inflating the stock market to make it appear that things are great. They're falsifying temperature records we see here in Northern California. The official temperature readings for any given day are 4 or 5 degrees less than the actual temperature. So they're trying to hide how hot it really is. And when people get past watching football games and soccer, and as we just see the World Cup and all these distractions to keep the population busy, to keep them entertained. And the blind spot, back to what's happening right now, I believe the power structure knows that the whole ship is going down. In my mind, if there's the slightest chance, no matter how dark the horizon, if there's the slightest chance that we can affect it for the better, you must try. You have no other option but to try with all your might. It's our duty.
They don't believe that the government could do that to them. That's one of the problems that, to create public opinion on this issue, because people refuse to believe that the governments would do anything, such a thing to them.
I will sacrifice anything, everything, to have any chance of a future for my children, however primitive that existence. Even though what we face is difficult to imagine, we face global extinction. You can't hide from this. You can't hide. You have to answer your conscience. You have to stand, period.
Okay, there's very heavy chemtrails being laid over Northern California and Southern Oregon, and we see there's no aerosols over California yet, but there's a bunch being laid out in the Pacific, and this is a standard procedure for them. They want to lay the heavy trails out over the ocean where nobody can see it, and then they're smeared out by the time they reach the land. Okay, now we go back to about noon. Very heavy, lots of spraying. They're even spraying over the land, which is unusual. What also is unusual is these satellite images are not photoshopped today for some reason. Jump ahead a few hours. So what do? How do aerosols kill thunderstorms? You lay them heavy on top of the storm system, and that creates a hot air layer aloft, a capping inversion, which stops the convection of the storm. So that by the time these storms wrap around and reach the coast, maybe 8 a.m. in the morning, these storms will not have any rain in them. That's what this is all about, to prevent any thunderstorms from building up in this band here.
It looks like those that schedule the weather are already trying to condition the population for another all-out engineered winter over parts of the U.S. This is going to mean a lot of chemically nucleated snowstorms. It's important people look this up, become familiar with this process, because it is a main tool used by the geoengineers right now. These are dead cows laying in the mud, and this is really one of many astounding pictures. The snow did not last long. The temperatures immediately rebounded up to the 60s. People have to ask, again, how is this possible? How could these cows have died? Because they're in an extremely heavy snow. Because the temperatures are far too warm, the air carries too much moisture. It's a chemically nucleated snow, so it's going through an endothermic reaction against the hide of the cattle. So that endothermic reaction can create extremely cold temperatures where you're actually touching this material. We see plants and trees flash burn from the same material, kill the cows in this case. Again, lots and lots of pictures of these dead cows all over the internet. This is truly saddening, and this is where geoengineering is such an incredible weapon when nobody has a clue this has happened. Chinese scientists create second artificial snowstorm in Beijing. This has been covered by mainstream media. We're not talking about a fringe subject here. And this winter, it looks like they will use this tool a lot over the continental US. So it's important people understand what it is all about. This is a process that has been around for some time. In fact, the earliest ice nucleating patents we found go back to 1950. Now, what happens when this chemical nucleating material falls on lakes in large quantities? Weird ice boulders wash up on Lake Michigan. You would think that the public would start to question this, you would think. But it seems anymore, so long as a quote-unquote expert paid by the power structure says it's okay or normal, or that they figured out what happened and nothing to worry about, the public just goes back to sleep. So here you have 75-pound ice boulders all over the lake. This is from this chemical nucleating material that builds up and starts to make a spherical shape as these waters, as the wind blows and rolls this material over and over. Now, as you have this nucleating material in the Great Lakes, as you see in this headline and this picture, we had ice on the shores of the Great Lakes while we had 85-degree temperatures at the same time. Now, how is this possible? This nucleated material hangs around for a long time. This is a NOAA map. This gives a very clear picture of what we saw all year in the continental US. The West was frying while the East was engineered to the cool side. Unnatural maps completely. In fact, January of this year, Alaska, the warmest on record. Didn't hear media talking about that. Again, media's job right now, confuse the public, help to sell geoengineering by making it seem the planet's cool. This is what the geoengineers and big oil want. And a lot of people are taking the bait, unfortunately. Last, say, decade and a half, given the overall ecosystem health, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say the decline would be in, say, the last decade and a half, 15 years?
Well, I think we're pretty much up to an 8 in overall impact, and
which is cataclysmic, and that
amount
of time is cataclysmic.
It's
yes.
cataclysmic.
So, and now it's taken this long for someone with your credentials, your background, former military meteorologist, 38-year fish and game biologist. It's taken how long before people really start to listen to what you're saying, an expert? Because a lot of people don't have your courage.
I was hoping that a whole lot more folks would come out with what's really going on, what they're seeing. You know, it took a while to sort through all of the information about what's really going on. When I first started seeing the chemtrails, I just saw jet clouds being made. They weren't contrails, so it was obvious to me that they weren't contrails.
You recognized it immediately.
Oh, immediately.
Yeah,
I go,
yeah.
well, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
When I started looking at the aircraft and found out they were all unmarked, flying grid patterns, doing turnarounds, it was real obvious to me that it was a controlled program. And in fact, I went to see the congressional folks to see what was going on. Somebody had to know, because I'm seeing aircraft flying through both civilian and military airspace. They have to be either military or military contractors or some sort of arrangement. So, and no, they didn't know anything. And I found out later, well, yes, they did, because most of them sat in on Kucinich's Space Act meetings. They knew about it, and they knew that chemtrails and HAARP combination were weather modifiers. So they had to put some kind of 2 and 2 together.
But they weren't willing to carry this out in the open at all.
Nobody that I know of was willing to carry it. So it's up to us citizen scientists and publics to do something about it.
I'm one of the several who have had my blood tested because I was getting sick and I didn't know why. And I did go to my doctor, and he had some question on how to order these specific tests for heavy metals. And when the results came back and they were really out of line, he said he had never seen anything like it in his life, and he didn't have a clue what to do about it. And I don't know if you have children yet or not, but I think that, like us, regular people, you would care if this was going to somehow affect your children as well.
And all these blood tests came back with a high, extreme level of barium, some aluminum. I'm talking about levels that they go above more than 1,000%. So I forget about the airplanes, the aliens, and anything else. This is a crisis.
You need to really push this, because really, we are being sprayed like we're bugs, and it's really not okay.
Now, if these people have evidence, if they have enough accumulated evidence to be of interest, can you tell us who to send it to get an investigation going? Because if their health is in danger, that's within your mission statement.
The problem is we have no jurisdiction over this issue, so sending it to our scientists won't help. We can't do anything.
Why do you not have jurisdiction if your mission statement has to do with public health and they have evidence that their health may be being affected? Not by engine emissions, but apparently by a deliberate spraying effort. So who do we send our evidence to get our public servants moving?
This is nanoparticle aluminum, barium, strontium. As Russell Blaylock says, it goes straight up your olfactory nerve into your brain. They're finding all kinds of rhinal disintegration, degeneration of our brain. We're breathing it in here. It's an irritant. The Navy has done, and the Air Force has done, nanoparticle exposure levels on rats. It causes pulmonary fibrosis, macrophage, inflammatory processes in our bodies. You're smirking the whole time here, telling us and just stonewalling us this entire time, saying you can't do anything. Our air is crap. You know, it was clear 5 years ago. Now it's a constant haze. We're breathing in this every single breath we take, all year long, all night long. This stuff is so small it cannot be filtered out of HEPA filters because we're a couple of orders of magnitude smaller than a HEPA filter. It's like I am so angry. I'm a chiropractor. My job is trying to take care of people, and we're being sprayed to death, and you're just doing nothing about it.
I have a question for the senator. In your opinion, do you think we're a bunch of nuts? Or what is your true opinion of this whole phenomenon? I moved from Michigan about 12 years ago, and when I first moved here, for the first few years, day after day after day, a crystal clear blue skies. We loved it. Arizona. It is no more, Senator.
Well, I'm 60 years old, and I've watched the sky for most of that 60 years, and I'm telling you, I don't need to be a scientist. There's something changed. We start reminding our elected officials we are concerned and we want something done.
Everything is dying right now. Now, with all due respect, Senator Ward, I understood what you were saying about taking baby steps because that's necessary in the political arena when you're trying to accomplish something. We don't have time to take baby steps. We need to take huge steps if we stand any chance of doing anything about this.
I have been forced to conclude that there is no greater or no more immediate threat to anything that lives and breathes than the global geoengineering programs short of nuclear catastrophe. The amount of lost sunshine hitting the planet right now is beyond belief. If people look up the term global dimming, they will see that fully 20% of the sun's rays that reached the planet several decades ago are no longer reaching the planet. I mean, that's a profound change that few people even know is occurring. And you have very visible occurrences in the sky from the aircraft, a very visible sun-blocking, expanding, dingy trails that are exactly what geoengineering patents describe. Where is this mountain of metal coming from? Why is asthma, ADD, Alzheimer's, autism, all elements related in many studies to aluminum or particulate inhalation? Why are these ailments going off the charts?
If you have a system like HAARP working in conjunction with aerosols, chemtrails that are spraying in the air, you can actually create updrafts that are so powerful that you can have these hailstone circulation patterns going over and over again, where you get hailstones the size of baseballs or even softballs. If you can control the weather, then you can control where the rain falls or where it doesn't fall. And if you can do that, then you can control whose crops survive and whose crops thrive. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. Tornadoes rip up an entire town, like Joplin, Missouri, I think it was. If you look back at the tapes of those weather systems, and you look 5 days prior to that, you'll see that in those days preceding those events, there was all kinds of aerosols being sprayed all along the California coastline, where the moisture for those storms came from, where those storm systems originated. It's insidious.
Corn is the main crop, and Monsanto leads in with corn products before it does anything else. So what we have is Monsanto leading in with a drought-resistant corn and an abiotic stress-resistant corn. The drought and the flooding, it's all the same patent. Monsanto has a patent for abiotic stress. Abiotic stress is the drought, it's the flooding, it's the excess soil, it's anything that's going to stress a plant. So when all of this weather comes and wipes you out, or you have a drought problem, drought, we've got the seed for you. Here's our drought-tolerant corn just for you, and it'll solve your problems. Oh, by the way, you have to sign this agreement, this 40-page agreement, so that when you go ahead and plant these seeds, you now belong to Monsanto.
Just by definition, the geoengineering programs are a direct assault on the most elemental aspects of nature. If such a contamination is present, shouldn't we investigate? Shouldn't local agencies investigate, which they have patently refused to do?
If geoengineering continues and the weather manipulation continues and genetic modification continues overtaking, we're going to lose our ability to grow good, nutritious food. We are going to lose our ability to thrive.
Shredded ozone layer, global drought, toxified soils, poison populations. Don't these issues matter?
I address this in faith. Faith believing that we collectively, as human beings, as humanity, have the power and the ability to stop these damaging programs.
before, about 5 years ago, our skies were typically blue, and now you see it's covered with lines and haze, and virtually nothing you see on the horizon, nothing you see in the sky above us is a natural cloud. I mean, aluminum or snow sample off the side of Mount Shasta tested 61,000 parts per billion.
This is just ordinary snow water, and people are drinking this stuff when they're hiking on the mountain. And remember, government action is required at 1,000. This is 61 times over the government limit, and our hikers are drinking this poisonous water on Mount Shasta Mountain itself. Barium, 83. Strontium, 383.
And again, we've already seen in 5 years soil pHs in this area that have escalated 10 to 12 times, and we can prove that conclusively. Well, this is not speculation. After several heavy spray days, there was a film that we received form on the surface of the water, and we tested that crust, and it was aluminum and barium. That after a year and a half's accumulation had 375,000 parts per billion of aluminum in it. It's literally toxic.
Don't you feel better when you stand up and fight than if you crawl down in a little hole and go to sleep? You know, I mean, my gosh, people, your families are out there, children are out there, your grandchildren. I mean, you've got to do something to help.
It seems to be an industry that's being built up to milk the taxpayers by undergoing some kind of a giant global spraying program to make all kinds of money on the project, and they don't seem to care really what effect it has. They're not trying to experiment to see if humans can survive it or anything like that. They just want to get this stuff up. And then we discover, as we're going further down the line, that there are companies generating genetically modified organisms, seeds, modified seed crops they're being engineered to resist the aluminum in the soil. And a lot of crops won't grow in that. And so now, after they've messed up the soil, all the farmers were going to have to go back and buy seeds that have been genetically engineered to resist the aluminum that have been put into the soil. And all of a sudden, mankind is completely dependent upon these companies like Monsanto and other giant agricultural firms. You can't even grow natural seeds anymore.
In the years that I have been a medical research journalist, I have looked at many, many things, and I found the same three issues in whatever I'm looking at. And that is that we are being dumbed down, we are being made sicker, and we are being made infertile.
And when these people started talking about the need for UN Security Council oversight, a supranational environmental security enforcement with a strong mandate by the UN, you know, it really was clear that they're looking for a global power behind the manipulation of the environment.
My name is Sofia Xenidis. I am 17 years old. It is quite scary to know that the air we breathe is not what it's supposed to be. That the food we eat and the water we drink contain traces of those substances which are sprayed out over all of us as though we were being poisoned like insects. The feeling that this is causing me are feelings of deep anger and rage. I don't want to be poisoned. I don't want to be infected with cancer. And I'm just so angry that this global poisoning can be going on such a massive scale, and not enough is being done to stop this crime.
I think that we just need to wake up and just look at what's happening, because we can't just ignore it, because it's going to get worse and worse if we just keep ignoring it and pushing it away like, oh, that's nothing.
Don't think because you don't see horizon to horizon trails that you're not being sprayed. the bottom line is if the sky is not blue and the clouds are not white, you see this cobwebby, hazy substance above you, those are aerosols, and they're so prevalent now that they're even naming these aerosol clouds in books as if they're some natural phenomenon. This is part of the conditioning of society. NASA has kids programs to teach them that these clouds are normal, natural, and innocuous. So, bottom line is that these programs were laid out in a way that they obviously intended to continue this for a very, very long time.
So what's happening is that they are spraying aluminum in the sky. Aluminum has neurotoxicity. That means it affects the nervous system. It has a real affinity to the nervous system. And that's why you hear stories about kids that have autism, people with Alzheimer's. When they do tests on these people, they find they have high elements of aluminum. So aluminum will not only affect neurotoxicity, it will change cognitive behavior, motor function, sensory function, and it is embedded in your tissue. It does have an affinity for bone, teeth, but it actually goes to pretty much every organ of the body. What they found with nanoparticle aluminum is that when it's in your body and it comes in contact with a cell, it changes what's called the permeability of a cell, and what happens is that it leaves the cell inert. And as a result, the cell starts to die. It can also mutate.
La organización que controla el tráfico aéreo en Reino Unido ha simulado en el ordenador cómo se ven desde el espacio las estelas que dejan los aviones durante un día de verano. Han fijado como epicentro el aeropuerto londinense de Heathrow y han aplicado datos reales de los vuelos de toda Europa durante 24 horas.
You no longer live in a world of blue skies and natural weather. The air you breathe, the sun you see, and the rain that falls is now being controlled and manipulated by geoengineering.
The most common story about chemtrails is that they don't exist. The next most common story is, well, this is to protect us from global warming. We're not really doing it, but we should be doing it in order to protect us from global warming.
So we found out that some of the chemicals that we had to fight long and hard to even have revealed to us that those chemicals were in fact endocrine disruptors. And what that means is that they disrupt the reproductive cycle. And at the same time, we see human fertility going down. I know all kinds of young women having trouble getting pregnant.
With regard to the aerosol schemes and the geoengineering that's going in the sky, we have no choice. We all breathe. We breathe every day. We take 16 breaths a minute. And as a result, what's being sprayed, we are inhaling. It's going through our bloodstream, and it's embedding itself in tissues. These type of particles can cause things like Alzheimer's, autism, and cancer.
With the chemtrails, they're spraying at 30,000 feet, and they're pretty much spraying the entire globe. After nuclear radiation, it's the second most dangerous thing, I think, going on the planet, in history.
I'm completely confident that we can stop chemtrails. It is an issue of getting educated, organized, and spreading the information out there so that people will get engaged.